The Founder of Demonic Cultivation. An English translation by ㅤㅤㅤㅤ. Read by Luna Minerva. Chapter 31. Morning Dew, Part 5. This time, Wei Wuxian did not close his eyes the entire night. He forced himself to stay awake until right before 5 in the morning, when he felt the sore, numb feeling pass and could finally move his limbs again. Calmly, he removed his shirt underneath the covers and tossed it to the floor by the bed. Then he pulled on the sash tying together Lan Wangji's clothes and forcefully attempted to remove his shirt. Initially, Wei Wuxian wanted to take it off completely, but after tugging it half off, he saw the brand below Lan Wangji's collarbone. Startled slightly, he couldn't help but stop and remember the whip scars on his friend's back. He began to feel that what he was doing was inappropriate and prepared to pull Lan Wangji's shirt closed again. But during the brief delay, the man seemed to have felt a slight chill blow across his skin. He shifted, his brows knitted together, and slowly he opened his eyes. Immediately, he fell off the bed. After suffering such a shock, the usually elegant Han Guangjun could not be blamed for losing his elegance so completely. No man had the self-possession to be graceful after going to bed drunk and waking up the next morning to the sight of another man naked in bed beside him, his own clothes half undone and their flesh pressed up against each other under the same blanket. Wei Wuxian wrapped the blanket around himself, covering up his torso, revealing only a smooth, naked pair of shoulders.
"You,"
Lan Wangji said. "Mm-hmm," Wei Wuxian hummed.
"Yesterday night
Wei Wuxian winked his left eye at him, rested his chin on a single hand, and smiled strangely. "You were so bold last night, Han Guangjun. You don't remember anything that happened?" Wei Wuxian asked. It appeared as though Lan Wangji had indeed forgotten. His face turned white as snow. It was good that he didn't remember. If he had remembered how Wei Wuxian had snuck out to summon Wen Ning in the middle of the night and started to interrogate him, neither lying nor telling the truth seemed like promising options. At last, after so many failed schemes where he only wound up dropping a rock on his own foot, Wei Wuxian had managed to recover some of his old skills. He had finally turned the tables. He very much wanted to press his advantage, but if he wanted to trick Lan Wangji into drinking with him again, he couldn't let his antics cast too much of a shadow over what had occurred. Otherwise, Lan Wangji would become cautious. Thus, Wei Wuxian decided to quit while he was ahead and threw the blanket off himself, revealing that his trousers were still neatly on his body and he hadn't even taken off his boots. "You'd martyr yourself for the sake of your chastity. Han Guangjun, I only took off our clothes as a joke. Your innocence is still unsullied. Relax!" Lan Wangji was still frozen in place, unable to reply, when the sound of shattering porcelain came from the center of the room. This sound was hardly unfamiliar. This was already the second time they had heard it. The Qiankun pouches, which had been trapped on top of the table, were growing agitated again and had knocked over the tea set. This time, the agitation was even more ferocious, as all 3 pouches had started acting up simultaneously. Yesterday, one person had been completely plastered, while the other had been knocked completely off balance by the first's behavior. Naturally, the duet had been relegated to the back of their minds. Concerned that Lan Wangji, horrified out of his wits, would lose control and give in to the urge to stab him to death right on the bed, Wei Wuxian said hastily, "Serious business. Come, let's take care of serious business." He grabbed some clothes and threw them around his shoulders, then rolled off the bed and reached his hand toward Lan Wangji, who only then stood up. Wei Wuxian had meant to pull him up, but this gesture made it appear as though he wanted to rip his friend's clothes off. Lan Fangji had yet to fully recover from the shock, so he took a step back, only to find himself tripping on something beneath his feet. He stumbled and glanced downward. The culprit turned out to be Bietchen, which had been lying on the floor since last night. However, by that point, one of the ropes which held the Qian Kun pouches closed had been shaken loose, and a deathly pale hand had already half crawled out from the small opening. Wei Wuxian reached out and fished out a flute from the half-open shirt over Lan Fangji's chest. Han Guangjun, don't be afraid. I'm not trying to do anything to you. It's just that yesterday night you stole my flute, and I have to take it back. After Wei Wuxian finished speaking, he even helped Lan Fangji pull his shirt back over his shoulders and tie the sash around it. Lan Fangji stared at him with a mixed expression, as though he very much wanted to question him about exactly what had happened after he got drunk. However, as a habit, Lan Fangji took care of serious business first. He forced himself to endure his lack of knowledge, the expression on his face faded, and he drew out his 7-string qin. There were 3 Qian Kun pouches. One held the left arm, one the legs, and one the torso. These 3 body parts could already join together and form the majority of the body. Mutually reinforced, the body parts' resentful energy multiplied exponentially and became even harder to control. Only after Wei Wuxian and Lan Fangji had played Tranquil Lullaby 3 times did their agitation gradually cease. Wei Wuxian put away his flute and was about to clean up the body parts which had rolled all over the floor when he suddenly let out a surprised, "Wow, our good friend really works out," he said. The sash around the torso's burial robes had become undone, and the robes had fallen away around his collar, revealing the strong, sturdy body of a young man. His shoulders were broad, his waist narrow, and his abdominal muscles were very well defined. Overall, his muscles were powerful, but didn't appear excessive. In short, this was a body countless men could only dream of. Wei Wuxian scrutinized it from every direction. He couldn't help but slap the man's abdomen a couple of times. "Han Guangjun, look at him. If he were alive and I tried to hit him, my hand would probably bounce off and get injured in the backlash. How exactly do you train yourself into this shape?" The tip of Lan Fangji's eyebrow seemed to twitch, and he said nothing. After Wei Wuxian slapped the abdomen a couple more times, to his surprise, Lan Fangji finally took out the Qian Kun pouches and, expressionless, began to seal the corpse parts back inside in silence. Wei Wuxian darted out of his way. Rapidly, Lan Fangji sealed all of the body parts away, tying a succession of dead knots in the process. Unconsciously feeling that something was off, Wei Wuxian lowered his head to look at his own body. Furrowing his brow, he fastened the sash around his robes and was properly dressed once more. Glancing over, he saw that Lan Fangji had finished putting away the Qian Kun pouches and was now staring at him, intentionally or otherwise. His eyes seemed filled with a desire to speak, but also hesitation. "Han Guangjun, why are you looking at me like that?" Wei Wuxian said deliberately. "Are you still worried? Believe me, I really didn't do anything to you last night. Of course, you didn't do anything to me either." Lan Fangji muttered to himself for a moment. Finally appearing decisive, he said quietly,
"Yesterday night, other than stealing your flute,
"You? What else did you do, right?" "Nothing much, other than talk a lot." The slight movement of Lan Fangji's Adam's apple was visible on his snow-white neck.
What did I say?
It wasn't anything important. It was just, for example, you really like... Lan Fangji's gaze froze. "You really like rabbits," Wei Wuxian said. Lan Fangji closed his eyes and turned around. "There's nothing wrong with that," Wei Wuxian said, very considerately. Rabbits are so cute. Who doesn't like them? I like them too. Like to eat them. Oh, come on, Han Guangjun. You drank a lot last night. Actually, it wasn't a lot. You were so drunk last night. I'm afraid you'll feel some discomfort this morning. Why don't you wash your face, drink some water, and sit down for a while? We can wait until you feel better before setting off. This time our friend is pointing south and a bit west. I'll go downstairs and get some breakfast first and leave you be.
Wait.
Lan Wangji said coldly, just as Wei Wuxian was about to leave. He turned around. What? Lan Wangji scrutinized him for half an eternity before finally opening his mouth.
Do you have any money?
Yes, Wei Wuxian replied, grinning. Do you think I don't know where your money is hidden? I'll get you some breakfast too. Han Guangjun, take it slow. Don't worry. He left the room, closed the door, and spent a long time standing in the hallway, clutching his belly in laughter. Lan Wangji seemed to have experienced such a shock that he stayed shut up in the room for a long, long time before finally coming out. While Wei Wuxian was waiting, he strolled leisurely downstairs, out of the inn and around the streets a few times, randomly buying food. He then sat on the steps in front of the inn, eating and soaking up the sun. After basking for a long while, he saw a herd of children, 13 or 14 years old, run past him on the street. The child in front ran extremely fast. In his hand, he held a long string, and at the head of the string a kite flew, bobbing up and down in the air, not too high or too low. Behind him, another child was holding a small toy bow. He shouted as he chased after the kite, shooting at it with tiny arrows. When he was younger, Wei Wuxian also loved to play this game. Archery was an art that every disciple of a cultivation clan had to learn, but most disciples didn't enjoy obediently shooting normal targets. Instead, when they weren't shooting at ghosts, demons, and monsters during night hunts, they preferred shooting at kites like these children were doing. Everyone had a kite, and whoever could fly their kite the highest and farthest while still being able to shoot it was the winner. Originally, the game was popular only among young cultivators, but when commoner children got wind of it, they liked it a lot too. Only, the threat posed by one of their small arrows was nothing compared to that of an arrow shot by a talented young disciple. Back when Wei Wuxian lived at Lotus Pier, he had played the kite-shooting game with the disciples of the Jiang clan, and had placed first many times. On the other hand, Jiang Cheng was always second. He either flew his kite too far and couldn't hit it, or he did hit it, but failed to fly his kite as far as Wei Wuxian. Their two kites were a full circle larger than others, and resembled flying monsters with gaping mouths and several pointed tails dangling from their bodies, blowing in the wind. Vibrantly and extravagantly colored, the kites looked unusually vivid and lively, even from a distance, though they didn't look particularly fierce. In fact, they were kind of cute. Jiang Fengmian had constructed the frame himself, and Jiang Yanli had drawn the design. Thus, whenever Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng had taken their kites out to compete, they had felt a kind of pride. At this point in Wei Wuxian's thoughts, the corner of his mouth quirked up into a small smile, and he couldn't help but lift his head in order to take a look at the kite the children were flying. Strangely, the entire thing was round and gold-colored. What is that? A flatbread? Or some kind of monster I don't know about? Right then, a gust blew toward them. The kite hadn't been flying very high to begin with, nor was it being flown in a very open space, so it dropped to the ground the moment the wind struck it. "Oh no, the sun fell from the sky!" one of the children shouted. At once, Wei Wuxian understood. The children were probably pretending to be cultivators in the Sunshot campaign. This was Yue Yang. Yueyang wasn't far from Qishan, and back when the Qishan Wen clan's power was at its peak, they ran roughshod over the lives of common people. The locals must have suffered a great deal, if not from the Wens letting monsters run wild, then from the bullying of their tyrannical cultivators. After the Sunshot campaign, the Wen's century-old reign immediately collapsed, and the clan was wiped out through the combined efforts of the other clans. Many places in the area around Qishan were so happy to celebrate their demise that the festivities turned into a kind of tradition. This game was probably one of them. The children stopped chasing after the fallen kite and huddled together. They thought very hard and began discussing.
What do we do now? The sun fell on its own before we shot it. Who's gonna be the boss now?
One of them raised his hand.
Of course it should be me. I'm Qin Guangyao. I'm the one who killed the big bad leader of the Wens.
Wei Wuxian sat on the steps in front of the entrance to the inn, watching with keen interest. In these types of games, the role of the now grand beyond measure chief cultivator Liang Fangzhen was, of course, very popular. Though he had come from a background that people found too embarrassing to even speak of, it was also for this very reason that they sighed in admiration of the fact that he had succeeded in climbing to the top of the world of cultivation. During the Sunshot campaign, he had gone undercover and taken to spying like a fish in water. He had run circles around the Qishan Wen clan, tricking them so thoroughly that they leaked countless secrets without becoming any the wiser. After the Sunshot campaign, he had used his keen wits to ingratiate himself to everyone in 100 ways and hatch 1,000 clever schemes, until finally he had ascended to the position of chief cultivator. He fully deserved his title and could even be considered legendary. If Wei Wuxian was playing this game, he'd also want to take a crack at being Qin Guangyao. Picking the child playing him to be the boss made a lot of sense. Another child protested.
I'm Nie Mingjue. I've won the most battles out of everyone and captured the most prisoners. I'm the boss.
But I'm the chief cultivator, Qin Guangyao said. Nie Mingjue raised his fist.
Who cares? You're my youngest sworn brother. Plus, when you see me, you tuck your tail between your legs and run away.
Qin Guangyao was indeed well suited to his role. He recoiled and fled.
You short-lived elf,
someone else said. Naturally, each child felt some fondness for the cultivator they had chosen. Nie Mingjue thus raged.
Qin Zishuan, you died even earlier than me. Your life is shorter. What's wrong with dying young? I'm ranked 3rd,
Qin Zishuan said stubbornly.
It's only your face that's ranked 3rd.
At this point, one of the children, seemingly tired from all the running and standing around, walked slowly toward the stairs and sat next to Wei Wuxian. He raised his hands and tried to play peacemaker.
All right, let's stop fighting. I'm the Yearling Lao Tzu, the strongest of everyone. Looks like I have no other choice. I'll be the boss then.
Wei Wuxian glanced down and found that, indeed, this child had a thin rod stuck by his waist. Probably Chen Qing. Only a child who paid no heed to good and evil and spoke only of power was willing to do Wei Wuxian the honor of playing the Yearling Lao Tzu.
No, I'm the wielder of Sandu. I'm the strongest,
someone else said.
Jiangcheng, since when could you beat me?
The Yearling Lao Tzu said with clear-eyed comprehension.
Didn't you always lose to me? And you still have the nerve to say you're the strongest? How embarrassing. You think I can't beat you? Jiangcheng said. Don't you remember how you died?
The small smile playing at the corner of Wei Wuxian's lips immediately faded. It was as though, caught off guard, he had been pricked by a highly poisonous needle. Suddenly, his whole body tingled with small stabbing pains from top to bottom. The Yearling Lao Tzu beside him clapped his hands.
Look at me. With Chen Qing in my left hand, the Yin Tiger Tally in my right, plus the Ghost General, no one under heaven can rival me.
He held up the stick with his left hand and a rock with his right and laughed maniacally.
Where's Wen Ning? Come out!
A small child standing behind the crowd held up a hand and spoke softly.
I'm here. I wanted to say, during the Sunshot campaign, I wasn't dead yet.
Wei Wuxian felt that he absolutely had to cut them off.
Cultivators, may I ask a question?
He said. The group of children had never had their Sunshot campaign game interrupted by an adult before. On top of that, the adult wasn't reprimanding them, but asking a proper question. The yearling Lao Tzu looked at him, baffled and wary.
What question?
Why aren't there any members of the Guosulan clan? Wei Wuxian said.
But there are.
Where?
The yearling Lao Tzu pointed at a child who had kept his mouth shut over the entire course of the proceedings.
Him!
Wei Wuxian looked over and found that, sure enough, the child in question's appearance was full of delicate beauty, his embryonic elegance and charm discernible with a single glance. A white robe was wrapped around his bright and clean forehead, serving in place of the forehead ribbon.
Who is he?
Wei Wuxian asked. The yearling Lao Tzu curled his lips disdainfully.
Lan Wangji.
All right. This group of children had mastered the essence of things. The person playing Lan Wangji should indeed keep his mouth shut and remain silent. In the space of a single moment, the corner of Wei Wuxian's mouth lifted again. The poisonous needle had been pulled out and tossed in some corner, and the prickling pain cleared in an instant. How very strange, Wei Wuxian thought to himself. How could such a dull person make me so happy all the time? When Lan Wangji descended from the inn, he saw Wei Wuxian sitting on the stairs, distributing baozi to the children gathered around him. Wei Wuxian ate his own baozi, and while he instructed a pair of children in front of him who were standing back to back.
Right now, there are countless Wen cultivators in front of you, armed to the teeth. They have encircled you, and not even a water droplet can get out. Make your gaze a bit sharper, yes, just like that. Good. Lan Wangji, pay close attention. Right now, you aren't the normal Lan Wangji. You're covered in blood, full of killing intent. Your gaze is very fierce. Wei Wuxian, get a bit closer to him. Can you twirl a flute? Twirl it for me, single-handed. Be a bit more at ease, a bit more confident. Do you understand what that means? Come, let me teach you.
Wei Wuxian let out an and passed the stick in his hand to Wei Wuxian. Very adeptly, the latter began to spin Chen Qing around his index finger. The herd of children wowed and circled around him, gasping in awe. Lan Wangji silently approached. Upon seeing his friend come near, Wei Wuxian brushed the dust off of his posterior and said his goodbyes to the children. Finally able to stand up, he began to walk along the road, laughing, as though under the influence of some strange drug. Sorry, Han Guangjun, I gave away the breakfast I bought for you to the children. Let's get some more in a bit, okay? Don't you think the children over there are adorable? Guess who the one with the rope around his head is imitating? After a few moments of silence, Lan Wangji was finally unable to hold it in any longer.
What exactly did I do last night?
It couldn't have been so simple. Otherwise, why would Wei Wuxian still be laughing all the way until now? Wei Wuxian repeatedly waved his hands. No, you didn't do anything. I was just bored. All right, I'm about to talk serious business.
Speak.
Straight-faced, Wei Wuxian said, the coffins in the Chang clan graveyard had been silent for 10 years, but now they've suddenly started up again. This can't be a coincidence. There must be some kind of trigger.
What do you think the trigger is?
Lan Fangji asked. Good question. I think it's the fact that torso was dug out. Lan Fangji's expression was so focused. It reminded Wei Wuxian of how he had looked the previous night, when he had attentively grasped Wei Wuxian's fingers while drunk. After a painful struggle, he forced down his laughter and spoke seriously. I think whoever cut up our dear friend's body didn't do it purely for revenge. Instead, it's a dark suppression technique. The perpetrator intentionally chose strange, haunted places to hide the pieces of the corpse.
Fight poison with poison. They hold each other in check, maintaining balance,
Lan Fangji said. Exactly. So, after the gravedigger dug out the corpse yesterday, there was no longer anything keeping the vengeful spirits of the Chang clan under control. That's why the knocking started again. The technique's logic is the same as the logic underlying the ㅤㅤㅤㅤ clan's simultaneous suppression of the saber spirits and the corpses in the saber temple walls. Our perpetrator could have even learned it from there. Seems like whoever it was had more than a passing connection to both the ㅤㅤㅤ clan and the Guosu Lan clan. I'm afraid their identity may not be convenient for us.
There are few such people.
Gradually the truth will surface. Plus, since our opponent or opponents have started moving the body, it must mean they're already getting nervous. They are certain to make another move soon. Even if we don't go looking for them, they'll come looking for us. With all this searching, sooner or later, more secrets will be spilled. On top of that, our good friend's hand is pointing the way. But I'm afraid we'll have to start moving faster. There's only a right arm and a head remaining. We have to be ahead of them from now on. The pair followed the road to the southwest. This time, the arm directed them toward Shudong, a place shrouded in heavy fog. And to a ghost town the locals couldn't be fast enough to avoid.